this is a mafia, okay? This is a mafia, and they seek to own everything, every inch of land, every business, every organization, and you can trip onto their radar by making too much money. Like as soon as there's like layers of this, and first they're going to try to offer you a job and try to control you, blah, blah. And then if they can't control you, they will try to destroy you. But their goal is to just successfully infiltrate, right? Curiously, and I'm going to read this to you or else you won't believe me. She kept insisting to me through many messages that I needed to look into the quote unquote Mormon mafia, which she said sits above Hollywood and even sits above many Zionist Jews. Now, I want to be very clear because this can be offensive to people. Every faith has been infiltrated. Okay, we know that things are corruptible. This is not an attack on and saying every person in the Mormon church is involved, every person, the Catholic, no. But we know that at the top, things get corrupted. It's just a fact. And if you are actually a person that cares about your soul and you want to get into heaven, your job is not to defend corruption, whether it's happening in your church, in your backyard, in your own home. Your job is to try to root it out. And it's about to get even crazier because back in January of this year, someone notified me that Courtney Love wanted to reach out to me. So there you go. Brett Cooper has mentioned that Courtney Love has also had allegations about Lou Taylor. We all know who Courtney Love is. If for nothing else, it's because the media has convinced most people that she had something to do with the murder of her husband, Kurt Cobain, right? That's the reality, right? I didn't grow up with this music. I didn't listen to this music, but I know the Kurt Cobain story. And I know that somewhere in the back of my mind, I was kind of conditioned to believe that she had something to do with his murder. It was never explicitly said, but there was enough innuendo to get us there. Anyway, when I made contact with her, it was because she had been watching my podcast and she knew that I was obsessed with the book Chaos. My mind just exploded, understanding how severe a psychological operation could be, the media being complicit, convincing us that murders happened. I ended the book and I said, did anybody die that night? That is how wild of a journey it is. The same year, of course, as the moon landing, an entire psychological operation. And you just go, what is real? What is not real? I don't know. If you have not read that book, you should read it. And I became even more obsessed with learning everything that I could about the 60s and the military grade MK Ultra program that our government employed in place after JFK was shot, right? Actually putting journalists on payroll to control our minds. If you are new here, you absolutely must read that book. You have to understand how this thing works. This is why I put together my book club, because it's so much that you just start to wonder what is real, what is fake. Are we actually living in a simulation? How could I have believed all of these things about people on the basis of what I read in the media? Because some sort of an authority, right? They present themselves as some sort of a authority, or they have expertise in this area that they fact check. And I think post-COVID, we're all ready to digest that these are psychological operations. Courtney Love told me so much information in January of this year. It was like she basically wrote me a novel. I couldn't process it. It was information overload. And if she had sent that to anybody but me, someone would have looked at this information and said, oh, this is just crazy. She's crazy. Truly, she's obviously insane, because people that are outside of the Hollywood matrix cannot grasp or comprehend what goes on inside of it. It's spiritually so offensive that we go, there's no way all of this can be going on. And then you join my book club and you read Hollywood Babylon and you're like, oh, this is actually how the system was built in Hollywood. It was built off of this stuff. So while I personally did not understand the nature of what goes on inside of Hollywood, I did start to understand it after everything happened with Ye. Okay. I saw it up close, and even I thought Ye was crazy, or like I was being hysterical when he turned around to me in my house and he said, when all that was going down and Adidas was canceling him and Gap was canceling him, he was like, are you an op too? Are you an op too? And I was like, what on earth are you talking about? Until I fully came to realize what he meant. It started with that book Chaos, and I've just done so much research since. Now I fully understand what he was saying when he was asking me that question, if I was also an op, right? Everything then happened to me in 2024, and I am certain Charlie was also going through that process as well, where you start to realize there are literally psychological operatives in your life. He was asking me, Ye, are you a part of the psychological operation that is meant to control me? Are you one of these handlers that's meant to stop me from breaking out of this effective mental prison? I'm realizing something's wrong and everyone's telling me there's something wrong with me when I'm saying, no, there's something wrong with this, right? Why are you trying to make me think I'm crazy? And I'm going back to my own thing for tweeting that genocide is always wrong. The operatives are right. Oh, don't you see how that could been anti-Semitic, right? So don't you understand, Charlie, if you go down this route of perfect sense, if you go down this route, you're going to lose millions of dollars. That is what he is referring to, right? Are you an op? Courtney Love, this is in January and in February of this year. I have all of this in writing. Effectively wrote explaining to me exactly how the operation functions and why. She explained to me that she was a toddler and she was experimented on at the Haight-Ashbury Clinic. For those of you, Haight-Ashbury, it's the intersection where they had this clinic and the hippies came, and this is when the CIA was just dosing them intentionally because they wanted to understand how to control minds. This was their focus, was how do we control like mass experimentation? How do we brainwash people? And they were experimenting on hippies when they did this. And Courtney, who is writing a book on this, so I'm not exposing anything, told me that she was given LSD at this age. This is how she grew up. She grew up in this area. And she told me, I did not kill Kurt Cobain. That was a part of a psychological operation to make the masses look away from what the CIA was guilty of. And she then told me through a lot of messages that at the core of all of this is ownership. Goodbye to your idea of a meritocracy, that you can climb the ladder and become a billionaire yourself. Actually, the best way to understand it is that when companies or individuals get too big and become too powerful, they send their agents to control them, to make sure that they are able to control their messaging. And if they cannot control those individuals, they will stage some sort of a hostile takeover of that brand or of that company or of that particular person. And there's a number of ways that can be accomplished. First and foremost, the psychosis. She's having a mental breakdown. She needs a break. She's really tired. Britney's been put on a Psych 5150 hold. Kanye, he said he was just reading a Bible, and Harley Pasternak, and we got into his backstory, and MK Ultra suddenly puts him in a hospital on a Psych 5150 hold, and somehow his wife, I guess, was cool with that at the time, being Kim Kardashian. Also, of course, Wacko Jacko. The media gets involved in this, blaring out to the public, don't look at what's happening behind the scenes because this person's just absolutely crazy. They're doing this to me right now. Obviously, you guys see this every single day. She's gone off the deep end. Thank you. That's where I'd like to be. I don't want to be in the shallow end, my friends. Yeah, let's get deep on these topics. Another way that they accomplish this is via lawfare. They will bankrupt you, okay? This is why what's happening to Elijah Schaffer, this is relevant. This is one of their strategies. When they want you to shut up, they will effectively bankrupt you. Your consequence will be that you have no more money. And Michael Jackson, despite the fact that he was beating Sony, he was owning his own catalog and almost owned the Beatles catalog. And that's when they swept in and they took down Michael Jackson. He died broke, right? And the people who he was fighting owned his catalog. Actually, in the news today, and this is totally a God thing, I saw Paris Jackson was in the news today. She's lost in court and she's still fighting over her father's legacy. It's insane. The very people he hated, right, now own his catalog, and he was beating them. And they lied to us about the pedophilia. I did a whole episode on that. You should look it up. Candice Owens, Michael Jackson. It's a shocking, true story of what they did and how we all believed it. And then, of course, brings us the next way that they accomplish what they want. The media, a reputational assassination, right? The Me Too movement. That's what I was getting at. It was such an easy way to hostile take over big companies, because even if these people survive and prove they didn't do anything wrong to these women who may be paid to come up and say, he did this or he did that, you effectively have to sell your company because you just can't, you're so tarred and feathered reputationally that nobody wants to work with you anymore, right? Who buys these companies? It doesn't matter, like I said, but at the end of the day, whether or not the allegations are true, it's how much damage they can do to you as a person. And of course, the last way that they can hostily take over your company is with an untimely death. Kurt Cobain, Prince, Michael Jackson, Charlie Kirk. And I should also mention Bob Breyer. Talk about a, I don't know, timely or untimely death. I remember My Chemical Romance. You guys remember My Chemical Romance? The drummer, well, he had an overdose at the right time, right?